Hi, Professor. My name is Aksa Kamar, and my partner's name is Aghil. And we have implemented the first part of our project, which further consists of three sub parts. And we have implemented our project, and I'm going to cover the first part, which consists of ER diagram and the initialization of the database, including the tables and constraints and assertions part, and then the second part, which is the web interface and the code part of the project. Aghil is going to cover that in this video. In the initial part, the first thing that we have implemented is this ER diagram. So this is the ER diagram of our project, which has few main entities, and then there are other entities, one or two other entities that I'm going to cover. So the main entities of this project are contest, sponsor, contestant, and judge, review, and submission. Apart from these entities, we have two other entities, which is judge, review, and then this is another entity that we have implemented. This is in the database we have implemented it as an entity, but here it is shown as a relationship which further has attributes. The contest entity has these attributes as shown: contest ID, title, status, begin, and sponsor fee, and it is related to sponsor through this diamond. And then sponsor has these attributes: address, email, company name, sponsor ID. Then judge has these three attributes: reward balance, review list, ID. And review is for reviewing the submissions that a contestant submits. This has score, comment, ID. And then we have submission entity, which has ID and the date, on which date the submission was submitted. Then contestant has two attributes: contestant ID and the reward balance for the contestant. So these are the major entities and their attributes associated with them. So we have three thick line and arrows in our ER diagram, and then there is one thin line and arrow, and then we have a thick line, just one thick line here. So this is one thick line and arrow here in this relationship, which shows that each contest is sponsored by exactly one sponsor. And then these two thick lines represent that a submission is exactly submitted exactly by one contestant, and then each submission is exactly reviewed once. So these are the three thick lines. And then we have this thin lined arrow, which shows the that each sponsor can review at most one review. And then we have this thick line here, which shows that a judge can needs to review or submits needs to submit a review, at least one review. So these are the major relationships here that we have in our diagram. And we have converted this diagram into the database tables. So we have created a document which we will be going to submit along with our code part and other submissions. So this document contains each and every table that we have in our database, and then the assertions that we have created. So this document has all of that. And then I'm going to go to the code part of this project, which is this file. So in this file we are .java file, what we are doing is so our requirement of the project is that whenever after logging into the project, a user, each time the root user clicks the initialize button, what happens is that it deletes all the existing tables and then create all the necessary tables for this project, and each table will be inserted with at least 10 realistic tuples which are hard coded in the project. So we have that implemented here. So this is the alter statement for the foreign keys and the primary keys, because we are before dropping the tables, we need to drop foreign and primary keys from our table, and then we are able to drop the tables. So this part covers dropping all of the foreign and primary key constraints, and then this highlighted part shows that after initialization, whenever a root user logs in, it drops all the main tables or deletes the table, and then after the dropping these, we go to the creation part of the table, which includes creation of these few tables. Sponsor table, contest table, we have a sponsor table, contest table, judge table, contestant, submission, review table, judge review table, and contest judge and users table. So these tables I have already shown in my ER diagram as well. So these are the tables that we have created here, and these tables have the respective constraints, which are primary and foreign key. And then here, as you can see, we have this constraint, unique constraint, contest id and sponsor id, which shows that each which shows the exactly one sponsor, or as I go to my ER diagram, it shows this thick line and arrow, which I have implemented here. So this shows the uniqueness that each contest is sponsored by exactly one sponsor. And then we have another constraint here, submission, which is unique submission, and then it was here that each submission is unique and it is reviewed only once. So that is also implemented here. So these two thick line and arrows are here. And then we have another constraint, which is at most constraint in our ER diagram. This is the at most constraint that a sponsor is able to review at most once, which was here. A sponsor is allowed to give reviews, but each sponsor can only give at most one review. So for this, I created an assertion below. So this is the assertion for that functionality, which basically this is basically a check which checks that each sponsor is able to give at most one review. So that's also implemented here. So after these constraints, so these are the table creations part, and then we have inserted values in our tables. So for example, let me just quickly go to one table, which is sponsor table, which has sponsor id, company name, email address, and then we have respective values. This is the wallet address, which we have named as sponsor id, and then its respective company name, email address, and then email and then address. So like this, we have inserted all the values in our all tables. So these are all the insertion part of the code. And then this part of the code is basically connecting to the database, and it is basically connecting to our database, which is testdb2. And then these are all the execute statements that we are um, uh, uh, mentioning here, and these statements basically call out these statements so that they are able to execute. So this is the execution part, and then at the last part we have different assertions, uh, which are here. So this assertion basically, when this assertion is basically that whenever contestant submits a submission, it should be like within the duration of the contest. So we have two values, that is the duration, begin duration and the end duration of a contest. So contestant should be able to submit that submission within these two values, begin duration and end duration. So that this constraint or this check is basically accommodating or incorporating that thing. And then we have another check here: if the submission is closed for a particular project, for a particular contest, a sponsor should not be able, a contestant should not be able to submit for that. So it's this basically addresses that. So it states that submission is not allowed for closed contests. If whenever a contestant is trying to submit for the closed contests, it says that submission is already closed. Then we have another assertion here, which checks that the review score, which is basically given to judge, should be between 0 to 100, judge as well as the contestant. So for contestant we have 0 to 100, and for the judge it's 0 to, contestant gets a score from 0 to 100, and for the judge it's 0 to 10. So this assertion I have created for the contestant part. So now this is for the reward balance. So reward balance, which is basically which basically goes to the contestants as well as the judges. 20% of that goes to judges, and then 80% is divided among the contestants. So it should be like greater than zero, and should not be less than zero. So this is a check for that. And then again for sponsor fee we have another check here. And then lastly, this I already told that this is for the at most one part of the diagram. So this is the initialization part or the creation part of the database. And then let me just quickly go to the workbench, and these are all the tables that we have. And I will quickly show one table. So this is the contest table, which has a contest ID, title, begin duration, and duration. So our Java code has hard coded tuples, 10 tuples for each table, and they are like reflected here. So I randomly go to this table, judge review, and I show that each and every table has these values inserted. So yes, so that's the diagram and the assertion part of our database. So the next part is the code part, which Akhil is going to describe how the functionalities are working, and the web interface part. So my partner is going to explain along with these this video. We will submit our code files, our documents, and the diagram to the canvas as mentioned here in the project, that you have to submit all the files. So we will be submitting those. So Aghil will take over from here.
Hi, this is Agil. So I'm gonna start with the web interface and the coding explanation for our project. So yeah, so let's start with the example of our project. So let's see the registration page of this project. So I'm gonna run it in Tomcat server. So this is my Eclipse IDE. I have all the files imported already, and I have uploaded the files in the zip file as well. So you can just access it up, and it's gonna look something like this. So I'm gonna run this on my Tomcat server. So this is a registration page for our project that we have created. So it's gonna say welcome to the registration page, and then it's gonna have few attributes starting with wallet address. The first thing we're gonna have is a wallet address, and then we're gonna have a role. So let's start with an example. So I'm gonna put let's say y y1, right? So it's gonna be y1, and I'm gonna put it as a sponsor. I'm gonna have some passwords here as well. Then I'm gonna register it. So after registration, it's gonna get redirected to our login page. So in this login page, I'm gonna have this. Let me just log in. So I used y1, right? So yeah, I'm gonna log in with the wallet address that I've used and with the password. So since I registered it as a sponsor, it's gonna redirect me to our sponsor page, and it's gonna have a welcome sign and then says you've been successfully logged in to the sponsor page. Since it's just the part one of our project, we didn't have much integrated into the sponsor page as it was not required. We will implement more in the upcoming parts. So there's also a logout button here. So if we click the logout, it's gonna redirect to our login page. So I'm just gonna show you another example here. So let's say we have the contestant with the wallet address y2, and let's say it's a judge, for example, and then we're gonna use a simple password for now. And then if we click register, it's gonna register the user. And then let's just log in with the same wallet address that we used previously. This was y2, and then the password is 12. So if we log in with that, as you can see, it's gonna be redirecting to our judge page. In the top, it's gonna say welcome, you have been successfully logged into our judge page. And then we have the pages under construction. As I mentioned before, we're gonna have more in part 2, and then it's gonna have a logout button as well. Yeah, let's just go on with the last example that we have, which is the contestant. So if we just give a contestant, and then if you hit register, let's just use the same here in the login page as well. I believe it is y3 that we used. Yeah, so it's gonna redirect to the contestant page now. So it's gonna say welcome to the contestant page here, and then yeah, as I've explained before, this page has nothing currently. Yeah, and in the login page, we can also log into the root user. So the root user has some special functions since he's like the admin of the whole project. So he's gonna have functions where we can see all the users and their passwords as well. So here let's just log into the root user that we have. So if we just log into the root user, as you can see, it's gonna display all the wallet address, password, and the role that they are assigned, and then it's gonna have all those things here. And then this is the root user that we're using with the password root2034. So for the root user, there is a button on the top. As you can see, it's gonna say it's initialize database button. So what this does is gonna drop all the tables in our database, and it's gonna create new tables and then new values which are like preset, that are like that can be used by other users. So for example, if I click the initialize database button, what it does is gonna, as I said before, it's gonna remove all the tables, and then it's gonna be the default values that we have over here. So this are like the values that is hard coded into our code, and we're gonna see about the how this works in when we get to our main code. And that's like the basic functionality of this website for now, and more will be developed in the part 2 and part 3 of our project. So let's get with what we have right now. So yeah, so all the things will be done using the control servlet Java file. So this is acts as like an intermediate between our JSP files and then the Java files as well. So in here you can see that we're gonna first import our packages, which is the IO exception packages that we're gonna use to give out warnings and all those things. And then we're gonna have our variables which we're gonna use for this part of the code. And then the main thing here is that the functions. So we're gonna have some cases such as to login, register, initialize, the function that we saw for the root user, and then a root page, which we also saw, and then there's a logout thing, and then also a list users. So let's start with let's say the login page, right? So here we can find the login over here. So whenever we're logging into the page, we're gonna enter our wallet address and also our password. So what we are gonna do is we're gonna see if our password is equal to root and if it's equal to pass123. If those things match, then we're gonna redirect ourselves to our root page, which you can see over here. So what this root page does is, if you didn't see here, so let's just log into our root page. I'm gonna explain it over here. Pass 1, 2, 3, 4. As I explained before, it's gonna list all the users. So how it does? So it's gonna go over here, and then it's gonna display the root.jsp file, and then it's gonna send the it's gonna get the list of users from the user.dao file. So this is a user.dao file, and then if you see over here, it's gonna use where is it? Yeah, it's right over here. It's gonna use the list all users function, right? So let's go to that function, so which is right over here. So it's going to use this function to list all the users from our database. So what it does is it's going to use the SQL command called select star from users. So this can be used to get all the data of the users that are currently there, and then it's gonna get all the values over here. It's gonna get the wallet address, password, role, and then it's gonna create a new a list called users, and then it's gonna add all those values in here. So it's gonna do an add function, and then it's gonna add all the values, and then it's gonna disconnect from the server. So here we're using a connect function. I didn't talk about that, so let's get to that. So the connect function here, what it does is it's gonna connect to our MySQL database with username John and password which you're using is pass123. So it's gonna connect to our database using this information, right? Yeah. So after it gets connected, it's gonna get these values and send them to the control servlet, which is right over here. So it's gonna get all our values here, and then it's gonna get sent to let's see where it is. Yeah, it's gonna get sent to our root view, which is over here. So this is the HTML file for our root page. So if you see in this page, it's gonna be like welcome to the admin. So it's gonna have an header and a body as well, and then we're gonna use a background image for this. So to match the purpose of the project, we are using like a blockchain integrated background, which you can see right over here. So it's kind of similar to that. And now let's get to the form over here. So this is gonna have the initialize database button, which is right over here. So that button is created from that JSP file, and then it's gonna have a logout, which is over here. So this logout is gonna be used for that, and then we're gonna have a list of users file, and this is the wallet address, password, and the role which we'll be using for that. And this C for each is the JSTL core attribute. So what it does is for every user present in the user table list users, it's gonna get their values, and then we're gonna do a C out value for all the entries. So this is gonna put it in a table for us. This TD function and the TR function is used to so that it can be put out in a table form like this. Yeah. So let's go to the next function in our control servlet here. So yeah, there's one more thing I want to talk about in the login page. So if you want to get logged in successfully, the one thing is that it's gonna check if it's a root or password, and the other thing is that it's gonna check, right? If it's obviously gonna check if the wallet address is matching with the password and it is in the database, in the users table. So when it checks that, it's gonna see if it's there. Then if it's there, it's gonna say login successful and redirecting. So right here we have integrated functionality smartly. I would say that we are using integer value called for role. So it's just an int variable, and then what it does is it's gonna get the role of the wallet of the user. that they're using. So if a person has a wallet address, let's say xxx1, so that xxx1 will be assigned to a role, which is either role sponsor, judge, or contestant. So what this does is, so this function gets our role from from using the user DAO function. So we can see that over here. If we go over here and then if we scroll down, we could see the role function. Let me see where it is. Uh, mm, yeah, so it's a role login which is right over here. So using this function, if we're gonna see, we're gonna have select the role from the wallet address. So we're gonna get the role for a particular wallet address by connecting to a database server, and then with that we're gonna have a integer value assigned to 0 initially. We are using integer because it's easiest to get the values, right? So it's going to be like 0 1 2 3, so it's going to be easy to get the values. So what we're going to say is we're going to start from 0 to the size of the values that we're going to have, and then it's going to see for every integer value if it's a role. So if we're going to get our role as a judge, if it's a judge, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna increment, we're gonna say that our integer value here is gonna be set to 1. And same goes, if it's a sponsor, we're gonna set it to 2. And then if it is a contestant, we're gonna set it to 3. And then finally we're gonna return this value back to our control servlet. So in the control servlet here, you can see that what we're going to do is if 1 is received, we know it's for the judge, right? So in the control servlet, it's going to say, okay, we have received 1, so it is a judge. So we're going to redirect him or that person to our judge page. So as you see, as you saw before, so this is a judge page. I can just show you here the JSP file for it. So we have seen that in the working before. So what it does is it's going to be say, yeah, you have been successfully logged into the judge page, and this is how it looks. So it's gonna say that, and then same goes for the other things as well. So if it's a 2, we know that it's a sponsor, so it's gonna redirect to a sponsor page, and then if it's 3, it's gonna redirect to a contestant page. So that's how the login works, and that's how we have implemented login for specific roles. So it's gonna get segregated according to that. And then let's see the next function, which is the register one. Maybe that should have been the first that I should have started explaining, but it's fine. Let's go with that registration now. So for the registration, I can just quickly pull it up here. If you're gonna log out and click register here, so we're gonna have like 4 categories, right? So we're gonna have a wallet address, which is gonna be a hexadecimal, which is gonna be a long length here. So it's gonna be similar to this. And then the role, we have a drop down menu for that. So we can either have a sponsor, judge, or a contestant. We have made it a drop down menu so it to be easier for users to pick their role. And then we have a password and then confirm password page here. So in the registration page, a user registers for a role, right? So we have also implemented a smart thing over here to segregate the roles of the users. So if you can see over here, we have the normal check, which you're gonna you do, which is our password and the confirm password both are same, so it's gonna check for that. Only after that it's gonna proceed. If not, it's gonna give an error out to the registration page. So if it's the same, it's gonna say registration successful and add it to the database, and then it's gonna create a new list for users, and then it's gonna add those values to our database, right? It's gonna add those values to the table named user in our database. So it's gonna use the user.eo.insert function, and then it's gonna call users. So if we go over to the insert function over here, so if we're gonna go over here, and then let's search where the insert function is. Let's see. Right, it's right over here. So it's gonna go to this insert function in the user.to file. So here it's gonna connect to our database with the ID root and pass 1234, and then we're gonna use a SQL command to insert into our user, and then it's gonna insert our prepared statements, that is a wallet address, password, and role that we got manually from what a user types in, right? So those values will be entered here, and that will be sent to a database to be added there. And now next we have a role check. So this is used so this is a thing that we are using to get the role for a user. So whenever a user enters a role, we're gonna get that over here using the users.getRole. And with this, we can actually check if a user is a sponsor. So we'll see if we will see the user enters he's a sponsor, then what we're gonna do is we are gonna make a new statement here saying that we're gonna insert this value into the sponsor table as well. So this value is gonna be in the user table as well as in the sponsor table. So the sponsor table here will have sponsor ID, company name, email, and address, and the wallet address will be added to the sponsor ID field of this table. And same goes if a role check again is gonna be equal to a judge, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna add it to the judge table. So and the judge ID will be the wallet address that we'll be adding, and same goes here as well. If it's a contestant, we're gonna add it to the contestant here, contestant table here, and the contestant ID will be the wallet address. So yeah, that is about the insert function that we are integrating, so that each user, when he's entering, he's gonna be segregated into his own role and also in the user table, so that the root user can access the table. So yeah, that's it for the register function. And then let's see what else we have. So the initialize function. So this is the function that the root user can access to, have access to. And you know what this does is, so whenever a root user, sorry, let's go over here. Let's go to the login page, and then let's log in with our root user. So whenever a root user logs in, so he gets access to a list of users and the initialize database function. So whenever a user goes here, what happens is that it's gonna get directed to our user.dao java, and then if we scroll down here, we can see that whenever a user kicks the initialize function, it's gonna take him to this page right here. So this has some SQL values. So what it does is it's gonna first use the test DB, which is the database which we're using locally here. So it's going to have some few SQL statements that is going to be run, and the next one is the alter table, so which is to drop the foreign keys, since you can't drop the table if it has a foreign key already present. So we're going to drop the foreign key first so that we can drop the table later, the later stage. And then we're going to have then since we dropped all the tables, so we're going to create those tables again. So we're going to have some create table functions over here, and then we're going to create the tables here, so which is the 8 tables. I'm not going to go in depth of the tables because Aksa has covered them previously, so I'm just going to go over them at a glance. So it's going to create all those tables with the primary key and as well as the foreign keys for the values for the tables. And then what it's going to do is it's going to insert some values. So we're going to use another string for it to insert values into the table. So it's going to insert into sponsor with the sponsor ID, company name, email address, etc., with values specifically specified to them. So a sponsor table is going to have a unique, let's say a wallet address, and then a company, and then a company email. So we have chosen values which are more reasonable. So because in the question it said that we should have at least 10 values which is hard coded into the system, so we chose some values which were meaningful. Yeah, so then we insert into all the tables, and then we're gonna have some constraints here as well. Yeah, so we have constraints in the create table function as well, but then we are gonna have some extra constraints over here, so we just want to check everything out. I'm not gonna go in detail of the constraints, as I believe Axel have explained it in the previously. Yeah, but we're gonna have the constraints over here as well. So some of the constraints is gonna be like, it's gonna check if the submission date or time is between the start date and the end date of a contest, and then somewhere the scores, if a judge enters a score greater than 100 or less than 100, I mean less than 0, it's gonna give an error. So some basic constraints like that, and also some constraints which are like rare cases, we have implemented those as well. And then here we are using a for loop to run these statements over here. Since it is stored in a string, we're gonna get the size of the string, and then we're gonna run it over the size of the string so that we can execute all the statements one by one. And that's what happens in the initialize button. It's gonna get all the values are gonna get deleted, and new values that are hard coded, it's gonna get added. So that's for the initialize function over here. And let me go over to the JSP files for a bit. Yeah, so this is the root view JSP files. So this is the HTML CSS mixed file here, and now as it is a HTML file, it has a root, it has head and then a body as well. So the head, it has let's see here. So for the head, it has the title as a root page, and then we have a background image for it as well, which are using a something which is similar to our project, which is blockchain contest. So yeah, we're gonna have central. It's gonna say welcome to the admin page, and then this is the initialize button that we saw earlier. So it's gonna have that the initialize button, and then we're gonna have the login JSP here, which is gonna pointer to a logout. If you're gonna click logout, it's gonna go back to login JSP. And this, I think I mentioned it before. So these are just part of the JSTL function. It's gonna print out all the values here. And then same goes for some others. So it's the registration page here. So for the registration page, it's gonna be the same, almost like the previous one, but a few changes here and there. So here we're gonna have error 1, error 2. So what this does is, if we are gonna have same user trying to log in again, it's gonna say like if the user is already registered, so you cannot register for the same thing. Or let's say if the passwords doesn't match, so all these errors can accommodate in these two lines. So that's why we have given this error 1, error 2 over here. And then we're gonna give an the text type as wallet address and the name here for getting the wallet address, and that role we have done it differently using a drop down menu over here. And then the password, which is just you're going to type password so that nobody can see your password while you're typing. So those are the things that we have implemented over here, and that is the registration page. Right, and this is the user.java file. So this is mainly for constructors, and then for this function, like getting a particular function, we're gonna use this file. It's gonna get accessed mainly by the user.do.java and also the control servlet. So this can be mainly used to display all our users. So whenever we click list of users, it's gonna get our constructor values from this page. So it's gonna access this user.java file to get the values for the constructor. So yeah, I think I've covered almost everything over here. Uh, but let me just go through this one. So it's just a connect function I mentioned before. It's a database login. And then everything is gonna have its own constraints. So if there's an error, it's gonna be easier to display them to the user. So that will be helpful for them to know where exactly they went wrong. Like for example, the password I mentioned earlier. So it's gonna have that as well. Yeah, I think I've explained everything clearly, but there are some, yeah, this is like check wallet address. So this is a function that we use to check wallet address from a particular user. So some like this, we have check password as well. So it's gonna check if from user, it's gonna say if there's a password, then what is the user, right? If we're gonna give a particular password, then it's gonna get the user as well. So yeah, things like that will be worked out on that. So yeah, I think I covered everything so far. So far so good. Let's just check over here. So I went to the control servlet. I also went to the user.dao.java over here, and then I also went to the user files and then the JSP files over here. Okay, but I'll show you a diagram so that it's gonna be like easy to understand how the code works. So I have a diagram over here, sorry, over here. So yeah, so first let's go over to our web input diagram. So whenever you're gonna give an input in our web page, so let's say that we have a web page over here, and then let's log out for example. So whenever we're gonna, so let's say this is the registration page over here. So whenever you're gonna enter some values, right, and then we're gonna register like we're gonna enter some values. So what it does is it's gonna go to our register.jsp file. So this is our register.jsp file, which is right over here. Let me see. Yeah, so this is a register.jsp file. So what this does is it's gonna get all the values from here, right? So it's gonna get all the values and then it's gonna send it to our control servlet. So the control servlet here, it's gonna go to the registration function. So whenever that is called, you can see in the diagram, right? So it's gonna go to our control servlet and then to our user DAO file. So this is our control servlet. So let's see where the registration function is. So the registration function is right over here. So as you can see, it's gonna call user.dao to insert the user that has entered. So it's gonna go to the user.dao file, and then let's see where the insert function is. So because that's where it's gonna go. So from the insert function, you can see that it's gonna call our database. It's gonna do a SQL command. So it's gonna connect to our database with this ID and password, and then we're gonna do SQL commands to connect to our database. So whenever input is given, it's gonna go to the register.jsp file, and then to control servlet, and then to user.dao, and then it's gonna connect to our database. The same goes at the way around too. So from our database, let's say we're gonna get the values to our user.dao. So for this example, let's say that we are logging in to our root user, right? So let's do the login page, and then let's log into our root user using pass 123 oh wait using pass 1234. So with this, we're gonna see that list of users. So how does this list of users come over here? So what it does is, if you go to the diagram, so it's gonna go, like, it's gonna get from the database, it's gonna go to the user DAO file. If you're gonna go to the user DAO file, we can look it up here. It's going to be like a list of all users. So what it does is it's going to connect to a database, and it's going to run a select star statement from user, and it's going to get these values, and then it's going to send it to our control servlet here. And what our control servlet does is it's going to get these values over here and then display it. Like if you can see here, it's gonna get it from a user DO file, and then it's gonna display it on a root view.jsp file. So it's gonna go to our control server and then to root v.jsp, which we can see in our web page over here. So these values are gonna come from there, and that's how basically this code works. And I hope I covered everything. If you feel like I missed out anything, please let me know. I will clarify that, or I will add it in later parts. Yeah, if you have any doubts, please let me know of that as well. And thank you for taking your time and watching this video. Hope you had a good time. Yeah, see you.